Welcome to the mysterious world of real horror stories. Here we'll guide you through dark alleys where the truth can be even scarier than fiction. Each story holds valuable lessons and unforgettable experiences. If you're ready to explore strange encounters and unexplainable secrets, hit that like button and subscribe now to start. A few years back, I decided to sell my car on Craigslist. It was a 10-year-old vehicle that I had recently replaced with a newer model. Since it was running well and in good condition, I thought Craigslist would be a great platform to find a buyer. Having bought and sold cars on the site before, I was quite comfortable with how it worked, and I'd never encountered any issues in the past. But that all changed after taking photos. I created the listing and added lots of information about the car. Within 2 days, I got a text message from a woman who introduced herself as Jamie. She asked if the car was still available, and I said yes. Then she asked if she could come over and look at it. I said yes again, and we arranged for a meeting for her to come and look at the car the following night. I already had the car out in the driveway and had cleaned it, so that night Jamie arrived at the agreed time and came to the door. I went outside, met her, and started showing her the vehicle. She looked around and then looked inside the car as well. I remember she sat in the driver's seat, and I asked if she wanted to take the car for a test drive. She said yes, so I got inside the passenger seat. It was a pretty short test drive though, with Jamie really just driving the car around the block before going back. After that, she parked back in the driveway, and we got out. Jamie told me she decided not to buy the car. I said that was fine, and then we said goodbye to each other. I figured there was something about the car that she didn't like. I just hoped I would find a buyer eventually. So, after that, I went back inside. Hours later, when it was close to midnight, I was about to go to bed. However, I was alerted when I thought I heard the sound of a car door opening and closing coming from not far outside. My neighborhood is typically pretty quiet, so it was unusual to hear things like that. I went over to the living room and looked out of my front window. When I did, I saw this woman standing outside, right near my car that I was trying to sell. Upon looking closer, I realized that it appeared to be Jamie. I wasn't sure what she was doing out there. I watched her as she appeared to look around in the windows of the car. She also tried opening one of the doors, which was locked. Then she walked around to the passenger side of the car and messed around with one of the doors for a while. That's when I decided to ask her what was going on. I opened up the door and shouted to her, asking what she was doing. She looked up at me startled and quickly ran off. She went all the way back to her car, got inside, and quickly drove away. After that, I wasn't really sure what to do. I tried texting her, asking why she came to my house, but I think she blocked my number because it didn't look like the text went through. After that, I never saw her again. I ended up reporting what happened to Craigslist. Looking back, I don't know if she was trying to steal my car or what, but I'm glad that I saw her when I did. Back when I was poor and in college, I used to sometimes look on Craigslist to see what people were giving away for free. Most of it was junk or stuff that I didn't want, but occasionally there would be good things there. I actually once got a pretty decent TV for free, as well as a couple of other pieces of furniture. So I would just go on here and there and look around. It was casual, and I certainly wasn't expecting to find something every time I went on. One day, when I went on the free stuff, I saw a listing that had literally just been posted about 5 minutes prior. It was an ad for a Mac laptop for free. At first, I thought it was one of those scams where somebody lists something for free, but when you actually click on it, the description says it's like $5,000 or whatever. But when I clicked on the ad, the person said that it was actually free. They said it worked fine and mentioned something about having a bunch of laptops because of their job. It was not the newest MacBook, but about 5 years old. This made it seem more legitimate to me. Still, this was an amazing opportunity, it seemed, I know what you're saying, it's way too good to be true, but to me it was worth reaching out and asking. I quickly texted the number listed and asked if the laptop was still available. Within a minute or so, the number responded, saying that it was. They asked me for my name, and I told them. About an hour later, they responded again with an address, saying that I could come and pick it up that night at about 10. I was excited, thinking I was getting the deal of a lifetime. That night, I left my place a little before 10 and drove out to the address. It was a lot farther away than I expected, probably about 20 minutes. When I got to the neighborhood, it looked pretty sketchy, to be honest. Most of the houses were run down, and the yards were overgrown. I started to get a bad feeling, but I was already there, so I wasn't just going to leave. I found the address and parked on the side of the road in front of it. I walked up to the house, which did not appear to be in great shape. I texted the owner that I was there and then went up and knocked on the door. After a few moments, I heard somebody walking up to the door, and then it opened. There was a guy with long hair and a patchy beard who answered. He said hi, and then instantly invited me to come inside. I walked in the house, which looked pretty run down. It almost looked abandoned, to be honest. Almost every light was off except for this dim one in the other room. The man told me to go into that room, and so I did. This appeared to be a bedroom or an office, but there was no furniture in it except for these 2 old chairs and a folding table. The guy told me to have a seat, and I did in one of the chairs. The man said he would be right back and go get the laptop. By now, I was completely sketched out by this whole thing. I was kicking myself for even entering the house, but I was hanging on to the hope that I would get a free laptop. Looking back, I shouldn't have even gone to the house. If somebody lived in a place like that, why would they be giving away a free laptop? After the man left the room, I just sat there and waited. But the longer I did, the more nervous I became. Then suddenly the door slammed shut to the room that I was in. I could tell that somebody had closed it. The wind hadn't blown it shut or anything like that. I got up and stood there for a moment. The door did not open. I walked over to it and tried to open it, but it was being held shut. Somebody was on the other side. I was terrified now. I went back inside the room and looked around. I didn't know what to do and panicked, feeling like somebody might run in and attack me or something. There was this one closet in the corner of the room, so I went inside of it and shut the door. Then I called 911 on my cell phone. I quietly told the dispatcher my situation and gave them the address. Then I waited, expecting at any moment for somebody to enter the room I was in. I hoped that I would be able to hold the closet door shut if they tried to open it, but nobody came in. Things were just silent. About 10 minutes later, the cops arrived. I remember that they came inside the house, and I left the room, finding that the door was no longer being held shut. The police searched the house thoroughly, only to find that nobody was there. They also searched the property and nearby area and came up empty-handed. But they did tell me that the house I was in was abandoned and nobody lived there. So whoever lured me there did not actually live there. I was extremely creeped out after that. I told the police everything I could about the situation and then went back home. By then, the Craigslist ad had been deleted. I also found out that the phone number I had been texting with was a burner phone. I don't know why the guy just left, but I'm glad that he did. Maybe he realized I had my phone and could call the police. I honestly have no idea, but I'm glad that I made it out of there okay. And I haven't been on Craigslist since. This is the story of the time I got a job from Craigslist when I was in college. I hardly had any money, and I was really busy. I remember one summer I got an internship, but I didn't get paid anything for it. I was living with my parents, so I didn't have too many expenses, but I still wanted to have a little bit of money. I couldn't get a job because I didn't have enough time in my schedule, but that gave me the idea to look on Craigslist for something I could do on the weekend. I knew that there were people who would pay for yard work or similar tasks, and yard work was exactly the type of thing I was looking for. I was pretty confident in my skills. After looking on Craigslist for a couple of days, I saw an ad that interested me. It was a man who needed someone to do quite a bit of work on his property. The job would take several hours at least, but he was willing to pay good money for it. The guy also mentioned that there was potential for more work in the future. The ad did not specify a day, but said to contact him for more information. I reached out, and pretty quickly I got a response. We arranged a meeting, basically a job interview, at a local restaurant. The man's name was Robert, and he seemed to be a nice guy. He said that he owned several houses in the area, some he was fixing up to sell and others to rent. He recently bought a house that needed a lot of yard work. He mentioned that if I wanted, he might need me for another property in the future as well. Robert asked me what day I would be available to work, and I told him. He gave me the address of the house and said that I could have the job. When the agreed upon day came, I drove to the house and arrived when I was supposed to. Robert wasn't there, he was at another one of his properties. He said that when I was almost done working, I should text him, and he would come by to pay me. I started work. The property was a bit out in the country. I was supposed to mow the grass, do some weeding, pick up tree branches, and plant a bunch of flowers. The yard was pretty large, both in the front and back, and at the end of the backyard was a large woods. I wasn't sure if that was still his property or not, but I believed at least part of it was. It was definitely a lot of work, but I didn't mind it too much. For about an hour in, while mowing the grass on the riding mower, I noticed something odd. I was in the backyard, a good distance away from the house, but I saw what looked like a man staring at me from inside a window. It really took me by surprise because I thought the house was empty. I figured maybe someone was renting the place. As I kept mowing, I looked over a few more times. When I got a little closer, the man suddenly moved away from the window. I didn't get a good look at him, but later when I was mowing in the front yard, I saw him again. He was staring in my direction. When we made eye contact, he didn't move away this time, he continued to stare at me. I had to look away because it was really weird. I tried to ignore it, though soon after I finished with the lawn and moved on to the gardening. However, I noticed the guy was still staring at me. Not long after that, I received a call from the owner of the house. He was asking how things were going and said he would come by soon. I said everything was going well, but then I decided to ask him if somebody was renting the house. He said no, the house was currently vacant. I told him there was a guy inside who kept staring at me. The man told me he was going to call the police and that he would come over as soon as he could. He recommended that I go to my car and wait there until the police arrived. I took his advice and stopped working, then went to my car. I was parked on the side of the street out front and kept looking to the windows, but I no longer saw the man. About 10 minutes later, the police arrived, followed by the homeowner 2 minutes after that. He opened the house for the police, and they went inside. About 10 minutes later, they came out and said the place was empty. The man must have left. I was very confused because I hadn't seen him leave, so he had to be out the back. Robert went inside and said he saw evidence that someone else had been there. I didn't go into the house, so I don't know if something was stolen, but I was glad he didn't think I was crazy or making it up. The police looked around the front and backyard briefly and then left. Before Robert left, he said he trusted that I would finish and he paid me. I was in fact going to finish, so I stayed there and continued gardening. I was almost done, and it took me only about 20 or 30 more minutes to finish. When I was done, I was taking the weeds and tossing them into the woods as I was supposed to. As I approached the entrance of the woods, I saw the man again. He was standing pretty deep in the woods, partly behind a tree. I'm not sure if he knew I saw him or not, but I tried to play it off and calmly walked away. I was really glad I was done with work. I quickly went to my car and left. I called Robert and told him that the guy was back. After that, I went home. I wasn't sure who that guy was or how he got into the house, but it was a really creepy experience. I used to use Craigslist from time to time and had bought and sold several things on it over the years. However, something crazy happened several years ago when I was selling my PS4. I decided to list it on Craigslist back when the PS4 was the newest PlayStation, and the PS5 hadn't come out yet. I would be able to get a decent amount of money for it. The PlayStation worked perfectly fine, and I also had some games I was selling along with it. I took pictures and listed them on Craigslist, hoping that someone would buy them soon. Within a day, I got a response from a guy who introduced himself as Darren. He told me he wanted to buy the PlayStation and asked when he could get it. I told him he could come at any time and made sure the price was good with him. He agreed and asked for my address, but I suggested we meet at a local strip mall instead. I wanted to conduct business in a public space, and Darren agreed. We arranged to meet the next evening at 7. I packed up the PlayStation and headed out to the strip mall, which was pretty close by. Darren arrived just minutes after me. We met in the back of the parking lot, and luckily, things were pretty quiet there that night. After meeting Darren, I showed him the PlayStation and asked him for the money. However, Darren told me he didn't have the money right then, but would give it to me when he got paid the next week. I was angry when I heard that. I said no if he didn't have the money. I wasn't going to give him the PS4. Darren seemed confused and upset, as if he thought I would just give it to him. I told him that when he got paid, he could come and buy it then. But Darren demanded to get it now and claimed he promised he would pay me. Of course, I wasn't that stupid, and I still said no. I put the PlayStation back in my car and told Darren to text me when he had the money. Darren was still trying to convince me to give it to him though, so I closed the door and got inside my car. As I got inside, Darren started knocking on my driver's window, telling me to listen to him. I just ignored him and told him to move, but he refused. So I started backing out to leave. As soon as I did, Darren finally left my car, but only to go to his vehicle. He got inside his car and I thought nothing of it. But as I was leaving and pulling onto the road, I saw Darren's car come whipping up behind me quickly. When I got onto the road, he was right behind me. As I started driving home, I feared he would follow me, so I took a random turn, and sure enough, Darren did as well. I couldn't believe that this guy was going to follow me because I wouldn't fall for what was likely his scam attempt. I made a few more random turns and Darren continued to follow me closely, so close that I was afraid his car might bump mine. His driving also seemed a little erratic. I wanted to call the cops, but then I had the idea to just drive to them. I quickly got directions to the nearest police station and drove there, with Darren following me the entire way until he realized where we were going. I went into the parking lot and he drove away. I decided to report what happened, but I didn't think anything could really be done after that. I went home, and later that night Darren texted me, cursing me out. I blocked his number and ended up selling the PlayStation to someone else a few days later. After that, I haven't done any buying or selling on Craigslist. I know that most of the time it works out fine, but I just didn't want to take the chance and deal with any more sketchy people like Darren. I had a really creepy experience when buying something on Craigslist too, so that didn't help. I was looking for a bike because I wanted to ride more around town, and I decided to check Craigslist to see if anyone was selling one for a reasonable price. I found a bike that looked great. It was a hybrid bike, and the owner said it was in excellent condition. After texting back and forth with the seller, I agreed to meet him at his place. He lived in a nearby neighborhood that I was familiar with, and when I got there, he showed me the bike. The price was fair, so I decided to go for it. I handed him the cash and took the bike. I went home and started to put it together. It needed a few adjustments, but after that, I was ready to go for my first ride. The ride went great, and I was really enjoying myself. A few days later, I took it out again to go for a longer ride. As I was riding, I noticed that the bike seemed to be a little shaky, but I brushed it off and kept riding. However, a few minutes later, it started to shake a lot more, and I quickly realized that the bike was falling apart. I ended up crashing and falling to the ground, and thankfully I was okay, but my bike was not. I took it to a local shop to get it checked out, and they informed me that it would cost way more than what I paid for it to fix everything. Apparently, the bike was not in as good condition as the seller claimed. I had a bad experience with that bike, and it was really disappointing. I just couldn't believe that people would lie like that. After that, I decided to only buy from reputable stores. While Craigslist has its risks, I've also found some great deals through the platform. One time, I managed to score a vintage record player that still worked perfectly. It was a unique find, and I got it for an amazing price. The seller was very honest about the condition of the player and even threw in a couple of records. That was a pleasant surprise. My experiences with Craigslist have taught me a great deal. Although there are inherent risks and a need for caution, I've also come across many trustworthy sellers and found some fantastic items. It's essential to remain vigilant and listen to your instincts. Thank you for watching our real horror stories. We hope you enjoyed these spooky tales as much as we loved sharing them with you. If you had fun and want to hear more, please give us a like and subscribe to our channel. Your support means a lot to us and helps us bring you even more thrilling stories. Until next time, take care and stay curious.